Hey everybody, we are reading Dune, and we are now on to a chapter where we're back with Paul and the Fremen. And this is yet again another interesting and pivotal chapter in Dune. It starts off with Paul is waking up from a dream that he has had, and he was spending that in a still tent with Chani, and we learn that it's been a couple of years, and Paul and Chani have had a baby, Leto II, who is in one of the southern sieges where the Fremen have moved all of the women and children that are normally part of the Siege Tabor community. They're down there. It's much farther away, a 20 thumpers trip. That means that you plant a thumper to summon a worm, and you ride that worm for as long as you can until it is exhausted. Then you plant a new thumper and pick up another worm. So that's a pretty long distance away. And we know that in those sieges, there's a lot of industry that goes on. So the women and probably even some of the children working on all the things that the Fremen build, as well as educating the children. But Paul has been with the men. They've been doing raids. But on this particular occasion, Paul is going to summon a sandworm and ride it by himself. Mountain ride a worm for the first time. It is a rite of passage, and it's because Paul realizes that he can't really effectively lead the Fremen until he has done this, something that most Fremen do by the time they are 12 years old. Now, Paul's not that much older than that. It's been a couple of years since the first couple of books of Dune, but he is much older than pretty much all of the Fremen who've done this. We also learn that part of what's going on here is he's waking up from the dream, is he's trying to decide if it is a dream, because he is still experiencing a lot of the prescience. And the thing about prescience is he keeps having these visions of the future, and then he's remembering these visions. So he's having memories of future visions, which is a very disorienting experience to undergo. And because he's still kind of waking up, he's trying to remember if certain things that he is also remembering are things that have actually happened or things that have not yet happened. So as he's trying to sort this out, we're learning that Paul's sister has been born, Alia, and that she is regarded as a little bit strange because she is a full Reverend Mother at basically 2 years old. And she's got all those memories and experiences and abilities, and yet she is a child. So the Fremen don't know what to make of her, and they raise some of these issues with Jessica, who is their Reverend Mother, as well as being Alia's mother. And Jessica kind of chastises the women, and so she's not winning them over or doing her or Alia any favors with the way that she's treated, which Chani has helped to explain to Paul. And we also learn that he still has a little bit of an uneasy relationship with his mother. It's mostly positive, but they have their moments. And to kind of smooth things over, Jessica has let Paul know that even though she did not think Chani was an appropriate partner for Paul, it's too late for that, and they have a child now. So she tries to assure Paul that she accepts and she loves Chani, and she understands. And I think Jessica does indeed feel that way, though she understands that there's a bigger picture that Paul and Chani and everyone else needs to be aware of. And at some point, Paul is, he is the Duke of House Atreides, and he's going to need to fulfill that responsibility and take back, their standing in the Landsraad and the Imperium at some point. And Chani is not going to be a wife, but being a concubine herself, Jessica understands and hopes that everyone else will understand that that's perfectly legitimate. But Paul's a little bit preoccupied with other stuff. And he keeps trying to get more information about what's going on from Chani, but Chani is like, look, you need to focus on the task at hand. Not everybody who tries to ride the worm themselves for the first time survives the experience. It is dangerous. And, I believe in you, but yeah, you need to be focused. And she is there. She has gone away from the siege to be here for this. She's acting as the Sayadina in this case. So there's some cultural role that she has to fulfill. And she explains to Paul, is like, now I've got to leave you alone. I have to sort of separate myself. And so that everyone thinks it's all copacetic. And at that point, Stilgar comes over and he's like, okay, it's time, we got to do it. Tries to give him some last minute advice. He feels pretty confident in Paul's ability, because part of Stilgar is like, I think Paul could be, the Lisan al-Gaib, could be the savior. So, he should be able to do this, but there's always, some nervousness about it. And Paul is like, yeah, I do have to manage to do this, because I'm still trying to thread this needle of figuring out how to avert the jihad that will mean the deaths of millions, billions of people across the Imperium due to the Fremen fanaticism. And he knows that if he dies here, that he can't do anything, because the jihad will still happen. He's like, everything I do now is like, oh, Muad'Dib did this, and this was where Muad'Dib said this or touched that. And part of it also we learn is that they went and they recovered his father's skull from the ruins of Arakeen, and they've created a shrine for it. And it's part of his, did that happen? Is this a memory? He's like, yeah, that actually happened. That wasn't, I knew I had a vision about doing it, and it did happen. So now what I'm remembering is what we actually did. So again, the prescience is very strange. So Paul, he gets up his nerve, and Stilgar gives him a thumper. Shashakli gives him his maker hooks. He's like, these have never failed. And everyone else is off to the side, watching, waiting. And then Paul plants the thumper and starts summoning a worm. And it's a big one. It's like, whoa, this is the biggest worm that I've ever seen, that I've even ever heard of. And it is bearing down on me now. And that's where the chapter ends. So it ends with Paul calling the first worm. And the Fremen are already getting wrapped up in this is the legend. So it's an exciting chapter. It's really interesting. One of the interesting things, again, is Herbert trying to educate people in what prescience is and how it works, and how it's affecting Paul and what it must be like to live with it. But he teases you out with it. So he's not, Herbert's not beating you over the head with what's going on, but it's one of those things that the first time you ever read through it, it can be a little bit confusing as well. But that's the point, is that it's confusing for Paul. So he's trying to get the audience, the reader, to be able to identify what that must be like, what that experience is, especially something that's just so strange as having visions of possible futures, and then having memories of those visions, and then a little bit of confusion about, is this a memory of a vision or a memory of something that's happened, and what kind of a toll that might be taking on somebody. And so that's really interesting. Learning more about what the Fremen do and some of their cultural idiosyncrasies, I think, is also really interesting. And some of the other drama. So it's interesting. We're getting a lot of backstory. We're getting a lot of details of what's been going on. But it's just through his memories and him trying to remember if they are memories or if they are memories of visions. And then the action with the worm. So this is all stuff which is interesting, that it's all stuff that's been in the trailers recently. So almost this entire chapter has been in some of the trailers for the part 2 Denis Villeneuve adaptation of Dune. In terms of the Lynch movie, we do have Paul's first worm ride. The Shai Hulud. It's a pretty good scene. I like that scene. It's very memorable. They adapted, of course, in the miniseries as well. It'll be interesting how much of the prescient stuff and how much of that back sort of behind the scenes drama that's going on between Jessica, Chani, Aaliyah, Paul, the Fremen, how much of that will we see play out? That's what I'm really interested in. But yes, we get there's a line in this chapter where Chani says, "Tell me about the waters of your homeworld, Usul," and we know in the trailer that there's that scene where Chani and Paul are sitting on the dunes there, and he's describing oceans and how you dive in and you can't get to the bottom, and she's like, "That sounds loco." So we get that. We've got the whole segment where Stilgar is like, "Don't do anything fancy, just ride the worm," and that's part of this chapter as well. Shishakli is a woman in the movie, which I think is fine because this is really the only chapter that we see them, and it seems from the trailers that Shishakli is going to have a slightly more elevated role. It seems like she's in a couple of different scenes as well, so that'll be interesting to see how that goes. We know that Chani is there for that. So we don't know about Leto 2. We don't know if they're going to have that baby in this adaptation. In the Lynch movie, they don't. They don't have a baby. But in the miniseries, they do. So that's really interesting, and I think it's a great element for that relationship. And I think it's going to play out in an interesting way in the book, and it'll be interesting to see if Villeneuve uses that as well. We haven't seen anything from Aaliyah in the trailers. We know that we had Paul's vision of Jessica with baby Aaliyah in part 1, and she is pregnant, and it's just how much of a time jump will there be in the movie, and will they, how old will Aaliyah be? She's going to play an important part later on in the book, as we will see, as we'll get through. So I don't want to spoil anything yet if you're still reading ahead. But we will see more from her. And she is kind of an important character. So I suspect that we will have her. But again, you've got basically a 2-year-old who is as intelligent and gifted as her adult mother. So how will they depict that? It's had some mixed success. I think that the Aaliyah in the miniseries is actually really good, but she's clearly older than 2. So how are they going to pull that off? Is she going to be a CG Gollum-like character, dubbed? I don't know. They haven't given anything away yet, so we'll have to wait and see. Let me know in the comments what your theories are, and what you think of this chapter. And of course, if you have any questions, we are getting into this buildup of prescience and Paul's powers is just going to come to a head over the next several chapters, as you will see. And so it is something that will bear having some analysis, having some discussion about. Some of it gets a little bit abstract. It's open to interpretation. And a lot of people have spent years over the past 5 decades discussing what all of it means and what's actually going on. So I'll give it my best college try. But I'm happy to get other people to weigh in and make it a discussion, push back on any of my theories, or present your own, and ask your questions if stuff's just not making sense. Because like I said, as we get into the more ambiguous and abstract elements, that it runs the risk of your first time reading through going, I'm not sure what I just read. So, which I experienced when I read it. I was like 13 years old. Some of it I got and was like, this is very straightforward and it's great. And some of it I was like, I don't know if I know what's going on here. Seeing the movie a few years later helped a little bit, but like a lot of that abstract stuff, they didn't really get into too deeply. They kept it very surface level. It's like, I have visions of the future. Great. That was where it ended. So yeah, there you have it. A great chapter once again. Frank Herbert was a genius, and we'll see more and more evidence of that as we continue journeying through Dune. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again very soon.